In the Upanishads, consciousness is defined with three terms in Sanskrit, which is the language of the Vedic tradition. These terms are Sat, Chit, and Ananda. But let's look at the meaning. Maharishi explained that the term Sat means that your consciousness in its fundamental state, and we will define fundamental state as meaning it is separate from and yet connected to any of the active values of thinking, so mental activity, intellectual activity, perceptual activity has its basis in consciousness, but consciousness itself is separate from that activity, and it derives its continuity and stability by virtue of it being completely silent and non-active. Because consciousness itself is silent and non-active, it doesn't interfere with the active experience. Rather, it is the basis. Because it is non-active, it's non-changing and therefore non-variable. And this means consciousness is profoundly consistent and stable. Now, again, we notice this by our own experience. Our thoughts change, our emotions change, our perceptions change, but uniquely, consciousness is always consciousness. And in its fundamental state, it is silent and non-active. But it is not the non-activity of sleep, because it's consciousness. And the second term qualifies the silence as silent awareness or intelligence. So Sat, silent, non-active, stable, non-variable. Chit, pure intelligence, pure awareness. Pure meaning it is intelligent in its own state. And that empowers you, if you look around the room that you're in, to be quietly, intelligently aware of whatever you see or whatever you hear, and so forth. You are empowered to that effect purely by your consciousness. However, your consciousness does have a natural relationship to the physiology. And if the physiology is deeply tired, then the clarity of our consciousness is diminished. If we're well rested, the clarity of our consciousness is enhanced. Now, the third quality of consciousness, Ananda, also relates to the silence. It takes it a step further. Because consciousness is silent and non-active, experientially, whenever the typical ongoing dynamism of thought, perception, intellectual analysis, emotional variance, when that activity settles into the non-active silence of pure consciousness, and this is indicated in the Yoga Sutras themselves, because the very second sutra explains that the state of yoga occurs with a cessation of thinking. So when you are in a deep yogic meditative state, thinking subsides and you experience the silent calm of your own consciousness, which, being completely non-active, means that you are now in the deepest state of inner peace possible. And that experience is deeply pleasant, and it is referred to as bliss. Very quiet, comfortable, self-established, self-aware bliss. And these are the three fundamental qualities of consciousness.